What is your financial freedom day? This is the day that you no longer need to worry about finances. You can have work as an optional part of your life. To me, this sounds like an incredible, exciting day to achieve. And believe it or not, it's actually attainable for most of us. It just takes a little bit of planning and forethought in advance to figure out what that day is, the number that you need to unlock your freedom in your own life. Well, that's why I am super excited today to have Jeff Kikel. He is an expert in financial freedom and giving us that ability to have work be an optional part of our lives. He's started multiple businesses, had tremendous success, and is now doing some really interesting things like this 5x10 technique that we're about to learn about. But Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be on the show today.
Well, let's dive right into it. This idea of financial freedom and this Freedom Day sounds exciting, but how do you make that a reality?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you've got to start with a plan, or you've got to have a strategy. If you ask most people, they want to retire early, and they don't really have a plan. They just know they want to retire early because they don't like their jobs or they don't like what they're doing today. They're not feeling fulfilled. So, what happened for me was I had spent, close to 20 years of my career as a traditional financial planner, working with people, helping them plan for retirement. And what I started to see in the late kind of the 2012 to 2015 area was a little bit of a split in the clients that I was working with. I had clients that were younger, and I'm going to call them the post 4-hour work week generation. They were people that grew up, millennials, Gen Zers that, they're in their 30s, maybe 40s now. They grew up after the 4-hour work week came out, and they don't really know a world that existed where they get up, go to work for 40 years, save whatever they can, and then, downsize their house, buy a single car, go on one cruise per year, and they wear black socks and sandals. That is not the world that they exist in. The other side of the coin were my clients that were in their 50s and 60s who, they grew up in the world I grew up in, which was you work hard, you get a good job, you go to school, you get a good job, you work hard for 40 years, and, in the end, you're going to downsize your house, get a single car, go on a cruise per year, and, wear black socks and sandals. And what they were realizing is they kind of got lied to by the financial industry that if you just work hard and you put money away, you're going to be okay. They found out that, oops, I didn't really play it the right way. And most of them were saying, well, I'm just not going to be able to retire. I lost the game. So I had clients that didn't want to retire or didn't want that retirement world. And I had clients that didn't think it was attainable. And what I ended up doing, and this all started with one client. And that client came to me with that attitude of, well, I'm 58. I'm never going to be able to retire. And, when I looked at his numbers, I've done this long enough. I could look at the numbers and know you're going to be okay. And I just told him, well, you got up and went to work this morning and you didn't have to. It was your freedom day. And I saw this big smile kind of go onto his face. And I was like, that's interesting, because most of the time when I talk about retirement, people have a frown on their face. And that was the beginnings of Freedom Day. I started using that terminology, and it changed the mindset for most of the people that I was working with. Why did it change it? Well, it changed it because when you think about retirement, and that's the last time you'll hear me use that word on this show, I don't use the term anymore. When I think, or, when they would think about retirement, they would think about it as this time-based thing. I have to work for 40 years. I have to work until I'm 66. That was their, so it was like this thing that if I'm way far away from it, oh, I've got lots of years. Or if I'm way close to it, I don't have enough time. It's not going to work for me. And they would just kind of give up. But when I started talking about Freedom Day, I started explaining to them that we're not going to talk about a dollar amount, amount of money that you need to save. We're going to start talking about cash flow and what kind of cash flow you have coming in. Literally, if your cash flow needs aren't that high, let's say you're someone that lives very frugally and you can live on $5-6 grand a month. Well, it's not too hard to create cash flow of $5 to $6 grand per month. So you could have your Freedom Day in a couple weeks. I was somebody who was making a really, really good living, and I worked for people that I absolutely despised working with. And I went out and created an income within about a month and a half that replaced enough to cover my expenses. And I basically was free from my job. Now, I wasn't free from, the financial side of it, but I was free from my job that I could go and focus and grow businesses there.
That's incredible. So the core of it is to understand what are your cash flow needs, how much you're spending every single month. And then the goal and what I'm hearing is you want to create a cash flow income that meets or exceeds that. Is that correct?
Well, cash flow is never going to be enough. So my goal is to create as many cash flows as possible. So I'll kind of give you the steps of the process. So I created a process that I call the Freedom Day method. So, step one is pretty simple. We're going to sit down and we're going to write down all the sources of income we have coming in. If somebody's just got a job, well, they have one source of income coming in, and we're going to look at what their expenses are. And hopefully they are making a little bit more than what they're spending. And now they know, okay, this is what it takes. Those expenses are what it takes for me to run my life. It's what I call their minimum required income, MRI. So that's the whole linchpin to this thing, is having that MRI number, because we know what our nut is, what we've got to do. Now, this doesn't mean that, I'm going to, be able to go travel the world and everything else. That's just what it needs, what I need to run the household at this point. And once you start doing that, it's not really a scary number in a lot of cases. So then the next step is we're going to do something a little bit different. Most people would say, okay, well, now you've got to focus on how to create a job, how to do all this, create income and all that. The first or the second step in the process is we're going to put together a bucket list, because we need to have a roadmap for what it is we want to do in life. So we're going to build a bucket list, and we're going to take 3 things. And I have them create a 100-item bucket list. It's an afternoon's worth of work, but putting together a 100-item bucket list in 10 different categories. So 10 items in 10 categories, everything from personal things you want to do, relationships, things you want to buy, places you want to go, things you want to learn. We have them put that list together, and then they're going to choose 3 of them that have a price tag that they can do in the next 6 months. So then we go to step 3, which is retraining our brain. So if we're an employee, even if we're a business owner and we kind of don't think this way, we're going to retrain our brain to say, okay, I want these 3 things. I need to figure out a way to make these. Not, I can't afford them. Not, I'm going to put them on my credit card. I'm going to figure out a way to get this. So then we're going to look at, well, how can you do it? Well, if it's a relatively small thing, I gave this example on another podcast. I've had times where I needed some software or something like that, and I didn't have, at the beginning, I didn't have enough revenue coming in. I went out and drove Uber for a week and a half and was able to pay for the software in cash. Done. Okay, that's a simple way of doing it. But the way I would want them to do it is to go from being an active employee to active income, meaning I have some kind of skill set. Maybe I'm really good at doing PowerPoints. Maybe I am good at graphics. Maybe I'm a good writer or something like that. I'm going to go out on a site like Upwork.com or Fiverr, and I'm going to find somebody that's looking for my skill set, and I'm going to go and work for them. And then I'm going to keep doing that over and over again. But I'm going to take all that money, and I'm not going to use it for any other purpose besides to pay for those 3 things that I wanted. Then
Hmm.
you start to think, oh, okay, well, it's not so hard to make $300 or $400. I did this last year. So this was 2023. I came into the year and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to live the bucket list lifestyle. I'm financially free. I'm going to do this stuff. And I started the year and I said, you know what? There's 12 things on my list, my bucket list, that involve planes, trains, and automobiles. And most every one of those was $500 or less. So I decided, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I have a special skill of real estate investing where I was able to find properties for really low prices, turn around and rent those out for traveling nurses and, folks that are in the medical industry. And I was able to create a monthly income of $500. And what I did is I created the income and then I started doing my 12 things. And so I went and did everything from driving a Lamborghini out at the COTA track here, the Formula One track here in Austin. I flew on 2 World War II bombers during the year. I drove James Bond's car at Silverstone Raceway and outside of London. I went and rode on I was a big fan of Miami Vice when I was growing up. So I went and rode on one of the big cigarette boats off of the coast of Miami. Went and rode on some trains that I'd always wanted to, but every one of those things was under $500. So I finished up the year by accomplishing those 12 goals. And I still have that $500 of income that I created.
That's really cool. So you're building these other streams of income to kind of build that strong enough so that it covers your expenses. But the piece that I'm kind of missing at the moment is these other streams of income that you're creating, they're not, there's still work involved, right? You still have a quote unquote job to go do to earn that income. How do you transform that into something that doesn't require your effort?
So let's give ourselves an example of the same thing. So now I'm doing this little side gig, this little side hustle that's been paying for some of my things. And I'm starting to get better and better at it. I'm learning that, you know what, I can find clients. I can go on Upwork and I can find clients. And I've got this kind of consistent flow of money coming in, but my time is limited. I only have a certain amount of hours in the day and my time is somewhat limited. Well, let's say now I've raised my prices enough, because I've got a reputation. Now I've raised my prices enough that I can find a client and then I can turn around and hire somebody. I can use arbitrage and hire somebody to do the work. And I take the difference between what I sold it and what I bought it. Now it's truly passive income. Now there is still some active and I've still got to find the clients, but I'm not physically doing the work. Now I've now created a passive income source for myself. That's the first phase. And now what else could I do to do that? Maybe I start taking that money. Well, first off, if I have any debt, I'm going to use that income I'm making and pay off my debt, because you'll never be free if you have debt. Everything but your house. I wouldn't pay off the house if I didn't have to. Now I'm going to start creating either more income from that one source, or I'm going to find other means of income. Maybe it's investments. Maybe it is in real estate investing. I mean, not everybody's a real estate investor. Not everybody does a lot of does the investment stuff that I do. But you find those sources, and maybe it is, okay, well, we were doing graphics for people. Now maybe we can do websites, and now I can find people that need a website, and I could use arbitrage to find maybe somebody in India or the Philippines, or I was just in the Czech Republic. There's some amazing people in the Czech Republic, and the dollar goes way far there. They have monopoly money in that country. And what I would think is, I would give people a tip of like $1, equivalent of like $1.30, and they're just like, oh my God, you're amazing. And, there's that arbitrage around the world when it comes to really smart people who live in places that don't cost them that much to live. You can make that difference and create all kinds of different sources of income.
I love it. The two challenges I see right there is first off, how do you find the people in the Czech Republic or where else to do that work for you? But then secondly, I think the sales part of it can be a challenge. So
Hmm.
how do you build up a solid sales pipeline so that you get the deals in the door?
Well, I mean, once again, I would say, you either maybe you find local deals, you find local businesses that need work done on their business. But the other part is you can go on to upwork.com. This is a place that when I was first launching my businesses, I used Upwork as a way to generate business because there are people out there that are saying, hey, I need somebody that's a web developer to work on my website, or I need somebody that can help me with a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. So there's not much sales to it at that point. And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to work with somebody overseas. They want to work with somebody local in the United States
Mm.
because they don't want to have to worry about the time zone differences. They don't want to have to worry about the language differences, the cultural differences and things like that. So let's say you've been somebody that's worked for a big Fortune 500 company, you've put together presentations for senior executives or even yourself. Well, you have a higher caliber of what you could do and understand when it comes to a presentation that you might put together for somebody else. Well, that's something that if I can then take that skill and find people overseas using upwork.com, the same thing, I can go out and say, hey, I need a web developer. And, there'll be 40 people that will pop in there. They're all going to have some kind of rating. So you'll see what they've done in the past. You'll see how much they've earned doing what they're doing. You'll see the ratings that the people have given them. And, what I do is I'll test them out. I'll give them a simple task, see how they complete that task. Most times they complete it faster and better than I ever would. And now I'm the arbitrage. I'm that person in between. I'm managing this team of people. And then it comes back through me to, tweak it and tighten it up a little bit. And then I'm handing it back to the client at that point.
That's brilliant. You're basically doing arbitrage on Upwork. So
Yep.
you're buying services that people don't want to buy because it's overseas people that there's extra effort with. You're taking out a little bit of that pain, having to manage that service, but then you're getting the profit margin there. Well, what is that experience like working with people overseas? How do you do that effectively to minimize the amount of pain that you feel?
Well, I think, the thing you've got to do, the thing that you've got to do very well is you've got to be very explicit about what you want. If you're working with people, especially like in India, they're just not taught to think outside the box like we do in the United States. So something that somebody might tell me and say, hey, Jeff, I'm looking for this presentation that kind of has this feel about it. And this is what my goal is that I'm trying to do. And then they'll give it to me and I have the creativity to go, okay, well, you're trying to accomplish this. Here's how I would put it together if it was me giving that presentation. If I give that to somebody in India, it'll literally blow their head up. Now, I've worked with some people that are super creative over there, but there's a lot of folks that they're just not taught to be creative. They're taught to do this, stay within these boundaries and everything else. So you've got to be very explicit with them and say, okay, this is precisely what I want you to do. Literally, page by page, I want you to do this. And you give them a little latitude on the colors and things along those lines. But that's the most important thing. And you got to control your costs. So typically what I'll do is I'll say, all right, here's what I need done. And I'll be very explicit in a document and I will give them, and I'll put it into Upwork. They only have 15 hours to do this project. And then at 15 hours, we're going to review where you're at. And if you need more time, I'll give you more time. Or if you've totally screwed it up at that point, all right, we're going to probably have to find somebody else to do it. So that's typically what I would do in those cases. I'll interview people by giving them a small project that I need done, and I want to see how they manage that project. Some of them will just bust it out, get it to me, and it's kind of half-assed and not great. project. Others will take forever and they'll put out this amazing project. But I'm like, okay, we got work to do here. So we've got to kind of get in between someplace.
That's fantastic. You know, earlier before we jumped on the podcast, you were talking about the 5x10 method.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that technique.
Well, it's not necessarily a method, but it's my goal for this year that I set for myself. So I was sitting there actually I was sitting in Prague, Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic, in a bar, finishing up trading some of my client accounts, which was a test to see, could I do that overseas? It worked immensely well, and I got to do it in a bar in the Czech Republic. But I came to the realization that I wanted to show people that this could be done. But two, I wanted it for my own personal belief. I wanted to work on this year 5 of my revenue streams. So I took 2 existing revenue streams and I have 3 new revenue streams. 2 that were kind of launched, but I haven't really worked on them heavily, and 1 that I hadn't launched at all. And my goal for this year is those 5, and I'm sharing this on my podcast, on all my social media, what I'm doing, precisely what I'm doing with this. And what the whole goal is to have 5 of these revenue sources by the end of the year that are generating $10,000 per month recurring revenue every month or more.
That's amazing. What are the 5 revenue sources that you're tackling?
So I have 2 businesses that, I told you I have a specialized skill set in finding really inexpensive real estate. And it's basically what's called over-the-counter tax deed investing. Something I learned, I went through training on this, and 2 of the businesses are going to be real estate focused. One is going to be focused on real estate wholesaling. The other is focused on what's called slow flipping. And that's basically acquire a property at a very low cost, typically under $5,000. These aren't necessarily destroyed houses. Some of them are pretty ugly, but buying them directly from the state for the taxes that are due, turning around and then either wholesaling them, meaning I'm selling them off to somebody else that's going to flip the property. They're going to fix it up and flip it, or they're going to hold it as a rental property. That's just kind of this consistent chunk of big chunks of money coming in throughout the year. The other side of the coin is I will take some of these properties and do what's called a slow flip, where I become basically the bank. I'll finance it. So I acquire the property. I'll finance that property for someone. No credit check, no background. I'm going to do a background check to make sure they're not a criminal, but no, work history needed or anything like that. They just put $3,000 to $5,000 down, and then I'll, basically do this for 30 years, just like a mortgage. And, they're in a house. So I believe that people have the right to have a safe and, a place of their own. That is one of my beliefs. And so I'm facilitating that through my companies. So that's really 2 of the sources of revenue that are going to come in. The third source of revenue is through my podcast and other properties. So my books, my podcast, my YouTube show, all of that, I'm working to build that to where it's a consistent 10 or more per month income coming in. The fourth source of revenue is actually kind of 2 combined ones. One is investing in taking some of the profits from the other businesses and investing in a strategy that it's called a money press. It's an option strategy that generates income. And I'll just keep feeding more money into that beast, and it will generate a pretty nice little revenue source coming in. So, everything from options and stock market trading to, content creation to real estate, those are all going to be my 5x10s for this year.
Wow. For the audience, imagine how this could change your life. if you built out these streams of income, just one of those streams of income
Mm.
would really improve and change your life for the
Yeah.
better.
I mean, for most
And I
people,
love the
yeah.
creativity.
Yeah. I mean, for most
I
people,
love the creativity
$10,000 a
behind that.
month
Just by
would be
putting
a,
that
yep, sorry.
the game changing. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, the creativity behind that. I think that's maybe what many of us get bumped up against is we've got to come up with this idea. But you gave the audience a really simple approach, which is just
Mm.
go on to Upwork, match your skill, and start doing some work on there. And then as you build that up,
Yeah.
connect with people in other countries who can do it cheaper, and then you earn that arbitrage. Great place to start. You can start exploring beyond that. Now that you've done
Absolutely.
a lot of this,
Mhm.
what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen? What are some of the things for people to avoid?
Well, I think the biggest thing is people, yeah, they got to get out of their own head. You've got to get
Yeah.
there's the old statement that you are the sum of the five people you spend your most time with. If you spend your five, if the five people you spend most of your time with are broke, you're probably going to be broke. So you need to, one, start to get around people who are a little bit weird. Start to reach out to people in communities. If you're interested in real estate, how I started in real estate, I actually went to a couple real estate meetups and I met a couple of mentors that literally were like, okay, you're going to work for me here. You're going to do all the work, which is what I do for people now, is like, okay, you're going to do all the work. And then I'm going to, we're going to split the profits in the end. But I learned from those guys. They taught me everything I needed to know. And then I started to know how to go out and reach out to new mentors and people doing different things. And I now kind of have this radar for, oh, wait a minute, that's something really, really different. They're not just regurgitating the same stuff over. So, your net worth is part of your network, or your network is part of your net worth. So you need to start networking, whether it's through, online, whether it's, local meetups. You want to start talking to those people who are actually making money, who are not employees. They're people that are business owners. Take them out for coffee, find out what they did. Don't ask, ask them, hey, is there anything I can help you with to learn and do? And I'm not going to ask any money from you, but I want, to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to do real estate. I want to learn how to be an investment, person, all those different things. Find somebody that's good at it and figure out a way to help them, a way to add value to them. Not just, hey, teach me all this stuff so I can make money. It's, hey, what can I do? How can I serve you and learn, and then go from there? And that's the key. I mean, I am a never ending learner. The other part is, don't stop reading. I mean, most people, I saw a stat last night that 80% of people don't finish a book. If they start a book and they don't finish it. So the people that are the most successful, the people that I interview on my show, every single successful person that I have ever interviewed, and I have done over 2,000 interviews, every single successful person is an voracious reader. I will read anywhere from probably 300 to 400 books this year. I mean, I literally can read a book a day. Especially if it's something I'm super interested in, I'll dive into it. If it's a book that's total crap, you start reading it and you realize that, okay, this guy doesn't know any more than I do. I'll try and find one or two things in that book and then quickly flip through it and realize it's a pile of crap. And I'll stop reading it at that point. So that's how I'm able to do that. But I mean, there's always some good topic that you can find in virtually every book that's out there. So people that isolate themselves, they try and do this by themselves, they're going to probably fail. People that don't read, that don't watch YouTube videos, don't watch the cat videos, watch the ones that can teach you how to be better at your skill, invest in training. So the people that are like, I'm not going to do it, I can't afford this, we'll figure out how to afford it. One of my friends that I interviewed on my show, he put it the best way. He started, he basically started doing copywriting, or actually he did SEO work for other people. He got his first SEO client and he didn't know anything about SEO. He knew enough to BS his way in, and he took the money from his first client and bought a course on how to do SEO. And then just like blew it out of the doors for this client, and then was able to then go to the next person. And basically his strategy was, okay, maybe I charge that first person $200. Now I'm a seasoned professional. I'm going to charge the next one $400, then $800, then, $1,600, until he kind of hit the top. And then once he had hit the top, he knew, okay, that's the maximum I can make. Now I'm going to start hiring other people to arbitrage, and that's how I can expand and grow my business.
I love that. Both being a voracious learner, but also the network, the people you have around you.
Yep.
I get a chance to, on our show, to have billionaires or people in my network at that kind of level, making like world level impacts. And if I had to boil it down to one thing, the thing that made the hyper successful different than the average person, this sounds overly simplistic, but it's mindset. It's just getting out of your own way, getting out there and doing the things you know need to be done, even if it's uncomfortable to do so.
Well, and I would say the Jeff, other part is,
thank you so.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go for it.
No, something quick that I would say. I mean, for those people that are sitting there, what I call cubicle warriors, they're those people that get up every day, they go to work in a cubicle, and they die just a little bit every day. The biggest fear is, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to lose my health insurance. I'm not going to have a paycheck coming in. Well, that's why we do that transition period. It's why we retrain our brain. But the one skill, the best skill you can develop in life, is the ability to figure out how to make money. That's it. I mean, the reason I am so confident that I will crush the 5x10 strategy for this year is because I know how to make money. I understand how to make money, and I can just make more money whenever I need to. That's the skill. Once you have that, you never have fear. I have no fear in my life at all about what happens if I lose a revenue source or something like that. Well, then we'll find another one, or we'll figure out a better way to do that one.
I've never heard anyone mention it or say it that way before, but that's so right. Even for my own life, I don't really have a fear of financial failure, because if I lose everything, just the same way, like I know how to go out and make that money. Such great insight. Jeff, thank you for being here. How can people learn more about you and your show?
Well, okay, so the best place to go is www.freedomnationpodcast.com. We'll start up actually the second week of January. I don't know when this comes out, but second week of January, I'm starting up the show. I will be doing a daily update podcast. So I'll do some long form podcasts, but I'll also be doing some shorter, like 15-minute, hey, here's what's going on in my life right now. Here's what's going on with the 5x10s. So follow along, and from there you'll get into the rest of my world, but that's the easiest place to go right now.
I love it. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining today and sharing your insight with our audience.
You're welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on. For the guests, or for the people that are listening out there, this is not an easy job. I run a podcast myself, so wherever you're listening to this, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, but also make sure if there's the ability to hit a 5-star rating, hit an upvote, whatever it is, make sure you do that for Mike, because he's giving you this stuff for free. You don't have to pay him to do that.